On September the 13th this year, Sweden is set to hold its next election. For the last 4 years, Ulf Kristersson, leader of the centre-right moderate party, has been in charge and backed by a conservative coalition of Liberals, Christian Democrats and the far-right Sweden Democrats. Kristersson and his TLDR coalition ran on an anti-immigration platform, with a particular focus on security, both domestically in the context of a wave of gang violence, and externally in light of continued Russian aggression. They've fulfilled some of these promises by radically overhauling asylum and citizenship laws, decreasing gang-related shootings by 60% and pushing Sweden over the finish line to joining NATO. However, in spite of this, things aren't looking so rosy for Kristersson. His bloc has consistently fallen behind by 10% in the polls. The opposition leader, Magdalena Andersson of the Social Democrats, leads by a similar margin in public trust, and it looks like the left-wing red-green bloc may actually snag the victory in September. So, in this video, we'll explain why Kristersson's government has started to look a bit unsteady, what led to their faltering poll numbers, and whether the TLDR coalition still has a path towards victory. Recent elections in Denmark, Slovenia, Bulgaria and Hungary have shaken up the state of European politics, with major new trends emerging. We dissect these elections in the latest issue of our magazine, as well as explaining what's changing in Europe. That's just one of 80 pages in the magazine, because there's more in too long than you'd expect. Purchase your copy by clicking the link in the description. First, some background on how the Swedish Parliament, or Riksdag, works. It's largely divided across two blocks: the blue, so-called TLDR alliance, which is led by Kristersson's moderate party, and the red-green left-wing bloc. The red-green opposition is spearheaded by Magdalena Andersson's Social Democrats, Sweden's largest party, in collaboration with the Greens and with a tacit support of the centre and the left parties. Out of the 349 parliamentary seats, the TLDR alliance currently holds 175 seats, as opposed to the Red-Greens' 173, a slim majority. This means that while Sweden has a multi-party system on paper, functionally the Swedish parliament works more like a de facto two-party system. As we see it, Kristersson's troubles boil down to 3 key points. 1. The smaller parties are hemorrhaging support. 2. Sweden Democrats' scandals have tainted Kristersson's leadership. And finally, 3. General European economic stagnation. Firstly, the smaller parties have lost their voters. In order to hold any seats in Parliament, or mandates as they're called in Sweden, a party must exceed 4% of the total vote. Last election in 2022, the Liberals managed to just scrape by with just 4.6% of the vote. This was in large part thanks to tactical voting, or so-called rescue votes, where someone who normally would vote for one of the other parties in the alliance instead voted for the Liberals in order to keep the bloc stable. This means it can be difficult to pinpoint the exact reason why voters have since fled the party, but if polls are to be believed, they now rest at around 2%, far below the threshold. The core base of Liberal voters have either moved to other parties within the alliance or towards the Social Democrats and the Centre Party. This comes down to the TLDR alliance's shift towards the right. As the bloc relies heavily on the Sweden Democrats to pass legislation, it has put the Liberals through a profound ideologically driven identity crisis. Should the Liberals fall below the threshold, it would diffuse the votes of the centre-right, as the Liberals would then receive 0 mandates, and made it very difficult for the TLDR alliance to form a majority. Secondly, the Sweden Democrats have proved to be just as much of a liability as an asset to the alliance. They've supported Kristersson's government through a confidence and supply arrangement since the election in 2022, but hold no ministerial positions of their own. Earlier this year, Kristersson invited the Sweden Democrats to form a government together in the next election, which would have been a significant escalation in their political standing. However, though the Sweden Democrats have tried hard to rehabilitate their neo-Nazi past, they've since been beset by a series of new scandals. The party has, amongst other things, been revealed to run a troll farm of accounts on social media, bought 80,000 copies of their party leaders' books using party funds, and then burnt them when they couldn't be resold, and most recently, a high-profile Sweden Democrat had to step down after being implicated in child porn crimes. Furthermore, during a vote earlier this year, the Sweden Democrats appended a century-old parliamentary tradition called the pairing system. Effectively, if one side is missing a member of the Riksdag due to illness or other obligations, the other side removes an equal number of members. This maintains a balance that reflects the results of the previous election. In other words, if Kristersson is sick one day, Magdalena Andersson or another member of her party would stay at home as well. During the vote, the Sweden Democrats brought in 2 parliamentarians that were supposed to be paired off, one of which was later implicated in the aforementioned child porn crimes. They did this in order to strike down a proposal on transitional rules for people who had already applied for Swedish citizenship under the previous requirements. The resolution was struck down by 1 vote, but also appended the pairing system and jeopardised the government's ability to pass much of anything. At the same time, the alliance can't afford to lose the Sweden Democrats, as it's grown to become Sweden's second largest party. Thirdly, Sweden is no exception to the general European economic malaise that has held the continent back since the pandemic. In certain areas, Sweden has done quite well for itself. Inflation is under control, GDP growth has been buoyed by a booming tech sector, and Sweden is set to benefit from the EU's digital sovereignty push. However, it's also battling unemployment at 8.5%, among the highest in Europe. The budget deficit is growing and the welfare system is under strain. In other words, whatever metrics have improved, many Swedes aren't really feeling it right now. Furthermore, incumbents globally have underperformed over the past few years, leaving TLDR to fight an uphill battle. That being said, a loss is not yet guaranteed, and the red-green bloc has also struggled in opposition. Magdalena Andersson, who is still the most trusted leader in politics according to polls, has slowly been losing support over the past few months. Furthermore, forming a stable coalition will be no easy task. The Left Party, formerly named the Communist Party, recently demanded to be allowed into the government with ministerial roles in exchange for their support, a sharp shift from their previous deal. This has put Magdalena Andersson in a tricky spot. Depending on the results of the election, she may need the support of the Left Party to form a comfortable majority, which the Centre Party has outright refused. Over the past month, this has become even more difficult as the Left Party has been roiled by an anti-Semitism scandal, which saw 25 members expelled for celebrating October the 7th, amongst other things. For decades, Sweden and the Nordics more broadly have built a reputation for stability, prosperity, and a strong welfare state. But this election cycle has cast some doubt on this view. Whether the red-green bloc snags a victory or the TLDR alliance hangs on, what remains clear is that the era of quiet, consensus-driven Swedish politics may give way to a new, far more turbulent era. The latest issue of our magazine is out now, and if you want our best value ever, subscribing and using code SUMMER26 gets you your first copy for as cheap as £4.99, as well as 20% off as long as you stay subscribed. I told you about one of the articles at the start of this video, but this issue's truly jam-packed with content from all around the world. Obviously, the headline section is our rundown of Trump's wars around the world, discussing all of the different countries and regions which have faced Trump's military wrath, going nation by nation through the timeline, and reaching the ultimate question, has Trump created the modern holy war? From there, we dive into our regional sections, starting with the UK, where we unpack the results of the recent elections, take a look at the UK's odd foreign posture, and discuss if Britain has become ungovernable. Then, in the EU section, we discuss how Russia's sphere of influence is fading, why Europe's energy transition isn't what you expect, as well as looking at the Euro's missing members. Finally, in the global section, we discuss if we're seeing echoes of the First World War, what's next for Iran, as well as what really came from the Gen Z protests we saw emerging last year. That's not even everything. With this 80-page issue, our joint longest ever, there's even more to read than I've even been able to mention here. So click the link in the description to learn more and grab your copy today.